The luxury watch store was very quiet and fancy. The walls were dark wood, the lights were soft, and the glass cases showed off shiny watches. Every watch sparkled like it knew it was special. Clara stood behind the main counter. She wore a beige blazer and her hair was tied in a tight bun. She was looking at the store's inventory on her tablet when the door made a soft chime. A new customer had walked in. She looked up and almost rolled her eyes. The man was wearing old jeans and a plain black t-shirt. He held a motorcycle helmet in one hand and had a backpack over one shoulder. He walked in slowly, looking around carefully. His long, wavy hair went past his shoulders, and he had a scruffy beard. He looked like someone who had seen a lot and didn't need to prove anything. Clara looked at him like he was a mistake in a computer program. "Good afternoon," she said with a fake smile. "Can I help you with something?" "Good afternoon," the man replied in a calm, warm voice. "I'm just looking for now." Clara nodded but kept watching him. He walked to one of the glass cases and stopped in front of a special Swiss watch. It had a see-through dial, a leather strap, and shiny white gold details. It was one of the most expensive watches in the store. Clara raised an eyebrow. "That's a special model," she said. "It's from the anniversary collection. Very rare." The man smiled a little, still looking at the watch. "It's beautiful. I like seeing how the little parts move together. It feels alive." Clara crossed her arms. "Yes, well, these watches are very complicated. And, of course, very expensive." Her message was clear. She didn't think he could afford it. But the man didn't react. He just kept looking at the watch, fascinated. "Do you want to know the price?" Clara asked, with a voice that sounded like she already knew his answer. "I'm just curious," he said, not looking away from the watch. Clara chuckled softly, the way people do when they think they're better than someone else. She thought he didn't belong in the store and she wanted him to know it. Behind the counter, Clara's co-worker, Lisa, was watching. She found the whole thing funny. Clara and Lisa exchanged a look that said, "We know what's going on here." The man moved to another glass case. He stopped in front of a watch with a deep blue dial and fancy Roman numerals. "This one winds itself, right?" he asked, now looking at Clara. She hesitated for a second. That was a very specific question. "Yes," she answered. "It has a Swiss movement, one of the best." "What's the power reserve?" he asked. She paused again. "Around 48 hours. Why do you ask?" "Because the little rotor inside moves in both directions, but I can hear that the sound is a little different than usual." Lisa frowned. Clara felt uncomfortable. "Do you know a lot about watches?" she asked. "A little," he said with a smile. "I like learning." There was something about the way he spoke that made Clara uneasy. He didn't look like he belonged in a luxury store, but he knew things. "Do you work with watches?" she asked, testing him. "Not exactly." "Are you a collector?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. But today I'm not buying for myself." That sentence hung in the air for a moment. Clara stepped forward, trying to take control. "Well, if you're looking for a gift, we have simpler watches. Elegant, good quality, not too expensive." The man looked at her with calm eyes. There was something steady about him, like he saw more than he said. "You don't think I can afford this one?" he asked. He said it so softly, so gently, that it hit harder than if he had been angry. Clara paused. Her face got a little red, but she kept her fake smile. "Don't take it personally," she said. "These watches just aren't for everyone." The man was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Interesting," he said. The store felt even quieter. Lisa shifted behind the counter. A well-dressed couple walked into the store, sensed something strange, and quickly left. Clara stood tall. She still believed she was in charge, still thought this man would leave soon. She had no idea that this man was about to teach her a very important lesson. Clara gave him a sarcastic smile and asked, "Are you sure you walked into the right store? These watches aren't for just anyone." She didn't know that anyone was about to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Clara turned back to the counter, her high heels clicking on the shiny floor. Her smile disappeared the moment she turned away. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Lisa. "That guy talks about watches like he owns a factory, but he's carrying a backpack and a helmet." Lisa smirked. "Maybe he watched a YouTube video and thinks he's a watch expert now." They both laughed softly. Not in a mean way, but in that quiet way people do when they think they're better than someone else. Meanwhile, the man kept browsing. He still looked calm, still didn't seem to care what they thought. He walked over to another display case. This one had special collector's watches, rare, custom-made, each worth more than a car. He stopped in front of a sleek, dark watch with a moon phase dial and a deep blue face. Clara walked over again, keeping up her act of being polite and professional. "That one's not for sale," she said. She was lying. The man nodded. "That's too bad. It's a beautiful watch." He didn't argue. He didn't get upset. That somehow made it worse. He kept walking, hands behind his back like he was in an art museum. He was too calm, too relaxed. It made Clara uncomfortable. "Is there a brand you like?" she asked, keeping her voice crisp and professional. "I'm looking for a gift," he replied. "Something special. Something timeless." "And what's your budget?" she asked, making sure to let the question hang in the air. The man turned to her with a gentle smile. "Let's just say I'm not worried about that part." Before Clara could answer, another customer walked in. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit and had a big, expensive watch on his wrist. Clara quickly changed how she spoke. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hargrove," she said with a big smile. "We just got the new watches I told you about." She left Keanu standing alone and walked over to greet the fancy man in the suit. She treated him like a king, offering him coffee and showing him watches with special gloves. From across the room, Keanu waited quietly. When Clara came back to him, her smile was gone. She looked bored. "Still looking?" she asked. Keanu nodded. "Actually, I'd like to see that one again." He pointed to the first Swiss watch he had liked. Clara hesitated. She glanced at his boots. They were dusty. "Are you serious about buying this?" she asked. "Yes," Keanu said. Clara looked at her coworker Lisa, then unlocked the glass case. She took out the watch slowly as if she was afraid he might drop it. She placed it on the tray in front of him. Keanu picked up the watch gently, like someone holding a rare book or a tiny baby. His thumb ran over the small details. He turned it over and looked at the back, nodding. "Is it a gift?" Clara asked, sounding doubtful. "Yes," Keanu said. "For someone special." He looked up, his eyes warm. That made Clara feel something, but she didn't know what. Still, she smirked. "I hope they appreciate it," she said loudly. "This watch costs more than your old motorcycle." People in the store chuckled. Even Mr. Hargrove glanced over, amused. But Keanu didn't get mad. He just smiled, a small, calm smile. That smile made Clara feel more nervous than if he had yelled. "You might be right," he said softly. "But then again, maybe not." And with that, he turned back to the watch. A strange silence filled the store. Lisa stopped tapping her screen. The suited man turned slightly, sensing something was different. Nobody knew what was about to happen, but something had changed. The store felt like it was holding its breath. Then, Keanu gently placed the watch back on the tray and looked at Clara. Not with anger. Not with disappointment. Just calm. "Could I see the movement again?" he asked. Clara blinked. "What?" "The back of the watch. It's see-through, right? I'd like to see the inside again." His voice was quiet but firm. Without thinking, Clara picked up the watch and turned it over. Keanu leaned in slightly. "That engraving on the back, is it done by hand or by machine?" She hesitated. "Machine," she said. "That's a shame," Keanu said. The older models had hand engraving. Less perfect but more human. He said it like he had seen those older watches before. Maybe he had. Clara didn't know what to say. Keanu kept talking, not to show off, just to share. "This part here, it has a triple sealed system, right?" She nodded slowly. "And the power lasts 48 hours? But if it's fully wound, it can go up to 50? "Yes," she said quietly. "Impressive," he said. "It's a beautiful machine." Then he looked into her eyes. "And beautiful machines deserve respect, don't you think?" Clara felt something tighten in her throat. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he said them. Not to argue. Not to prove anything. Just to remind her. Keanu placed the watch back down and took a slow breath. "I'd like to buy it," he said. His words were like thunder in the silent room. Clara blinked. "What?" "I'd like to buy it," Keanu repeated. He pulled out a slim black wallet from his pocket. No fancy cards. No showing off. Just quiet confidence. "No payment plans," he added. Clara hesitated. Then, without a word, she walked to the register. Lisa watched in silence, her earlier smirk gone. "Do you want it wrapped?" Clara asked, her voice flat. "Yes, but not for me." She paused. "Is it for a birthday?" Keanu gave a small smile. "Not exactly." He didn't explain more, and something in his voice made Clara stop asking questions. As Clara wrapped the box in silver paper with a dark blue ribbon, Keanu stood quietly. He didn't check his phone. He didn't pace. He just waited. When the box was ready, Clara slid it across the counter. Keanu reached for it, then stopped. Actually, he said, I should tell you why I picked this one. Clara looked up, expecting something strange. But what he said next she never saw coming. It's for a boy I met during filming, Keanu began. A young fan. He was sick. Really sick. He had one wish, to visit a movie set. But he didn't want photos. He didn't want autographs. He just wanted to talk. We had lunch in my trailer. He asked me if I was ever afraid of time slipping away. Keanu paused. I think about that a lot now. Clara didn't move. I told him that time is a gift. And he told me that if he ever got better, he'd save up and buy a real watch. A beautiful one. A grown-up one. Keanu ran his hand over the wrapped box. But he didn't get that chance. Silence. So I'm buying it for him anyway. I'll give it to his parents. And a note. Another pause. Because time still matters. Even when someone is gone. Clara's throat tightened. Lisa looked away, blinking fast. The store was completely silent. Then Keanu did something that changed everything. He placed the box gently on the counter and stepped back. You know, he said softly, maybe this isn't the right place to buy it after all. Clara's eyes widened. What? I came here to buy a gift, Keanu said. But instead I was judged. Talked down to. He wasn't angry. Just stating facts. So maybe, this watch shouldn't come from here. Clara opened her mouth. But no words came out. Keanu picked up the box, turned and started walking toward the door. Half the store seemed to lean forward, holding their breath. Then just as he reached the exit, a voice called out, Keanu? Everyone turned. A man in a fancy navy blue suit stood at the door, eyes wide. Keanu Reeves? His face lit up. My God, I didn't know you were in town. Keanu smiled warmly. Hey Ryan. Good to see you. The suited man rushed inside, shaking Keanu's hand. You still ride that Triumph? You haven't aged a day. The silence in the store turned electric. Clara's mouth went dry. Lisa's hands trembled. Because in that moment they finally understood. Keanu wasn't just any man. He was Keanu Reeves. Ryan looked at the others and laughed. This guy, he said, pointing to Keanu, is the kindest person I've ever met. A true legend. Keanu just gave a small nod, not making a big deal about it. But Clara, who worked at the store, suddenly saw him in a new way. It was like she was seeing him for the first time. All the ideas she had about him before were wrong. Just then, a man in a fancy suit shook Keanu's hand. The whole store went quiet. Clara stood still, her face turning pale. The store manager, who had been watching from a hidden mirror, finally stepped out. He had been busy looking at his phone, but the second he heard the name Keanu, something clicked in his head. He hurried over, looking nervous, fixing his tie. His shoes made fast tapping sounds on the shiny floor. And Mr. Reeves, the manager stuttered. I didn't know you were here. Please forgive the delay. Keanu stayed calm as always. No problem, he said. But even though he said it simply, those two words felt heavy. The kind of heavy that makes a whole room go silent. Clara stepped back, still holding the gift receipt. Her hands felt cold. Matt, the man in the suit, looked at Clara, then back at Keanu. Wait, he said, half laughing, half shocked. They didn't know who you were? Keanu just shrugged. Wasn't important. The manager shot Clara a sharp look, like he was saying, fix this now. Clara opened her mouth, trying to speak, but nothing came out. The manager turned back to Keanu, trying to make things right. Is everything okay, sir? We'd be happy to give you a discount. Keanu looked at the gift-wrapped box in his hands. I wasn't asking for special treatment. He didn't sound angry, but his words hit hard. The whole store felt different. People who had ignored Keanu or looked down on him were now staring at him in silence. Some stood up straighter. Others looked embarrassed, remembering how they had acted before. Ryan chuckled and shook his head. You guys don't know who this man is, he said to the room. This guy once gave up his own fancy hotel room just so the movie crew could rest after a long day of work. And that's just one of the many stories. Lisa, another store worker, looked panicked. She turned to Clara, her eyes wide. Clara was still frozen, trying to find the right words. I didn't know. I didn't recognize. Keanu raised a hand, gently stopping her. It's not about being recognized, he said, his voice still calm but full of meaning. It's about how you treat people when you think they're nobody. His words hit the air like a knife. Some customers shifted uncomfortably. The manager coughed, looking nervous. Let me personally help you, he said quickly. And of course, we'd love to offer you anything else you might like. Keanu looked at him thoughtfully. You know, he said, placing the box on the counter, I didn't come in here to test anyone. I just wanted to buy a gift. He tapped the ribbon once. But I ended up getting something else instead. Then he looked at Clara again. He wasn't mean. He didn't try to make her feel small. But somehow, his quiet disappointment was worse than if he had been angry. Clara finally found her voice. Mr. Reeves, I truly didn't mean to. Keanu gently cut her off. You don't have to explain, he said. You already did, every time you spoke to me. The manager looked like he wanted to disappear. He glanced at Clara, then at Lisa. This isn't how we treat customers. Keanu gave a small smile. The kind of smile that said, I've heard that before. I'm sure. The room went silent again. But this time it wasn't a shock. It was a shame. Clara felt her face heat up. Her hands trembled. It wasn't just that she had made a mistake. It was that she had been so sure she was right. And now everyone saw how wrong she was. Someone in the back whispered, That's John Wick. Another person muttered, and she told him he couldn't afford a watch. The humiliation wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was quiet. And it was complete. Just then the door opened. Another man walked in wearing a sharp suit and sunglasses. He held a phone in one hand and looked around. Then he spotted Keanu. There you are, he said, smiling. I've been looking for you all afternoon. Are we still on for tonight? Keanu nodded, and the man walked over to shake his hand. The manager, still trying to recover, asked carefully, And who are you? Oh, the man said, I'm the director of Arcadia. We're in town scouting locations. Mr. Reeves is meeting with the producers later. The manager turned even paler. Another important person? The situation was getting worse by the second. The director looked at the box on the counter. That for a fan? Keanu nodded. A special one. The director smiled. You're too good, man. For a moment, it seemed like Keanu was about to leave. But instead he looked at Clara one last time. Not to embarrass her. Not to gloat. To give her something. The same thing he had once given a young actor on set when he was struggling. Time to think. Time to change. A few minutes later, the regional manager arrived. She had heard what happened. She looked Clara right in the eyes and said, You just hurt the reputation of the best store in the city. And now there will be consequences. Keanu spoke again, his voice calm but strong. I didn't dress like this to test anyone, he said. I just wanted to see how people act when they think you're nobody. The room felt different. Clara looked down, ashamed. Keanu's final words were simple but powerful. The way we treat strangers says everything, he said. And what did I experience today? That wasn't kindness. The store manager cleared her throat, trying to fix things. Please let us make this right. A discount, a gesture. Keanu raised his hand. I'm not here for a deal. He turned to Clara and said, Maybe someone here needs a second chance. Clara was surprised as she watched him gently place the box back on the counter. You can finish the sale if you want, he told her. Clara blinked, shocked. You still want to buy it? Yes, Keanu said, from someone who's learned something. Her hands shook as she finished the sale. She quietly handed him the receipt. I'm sorry, she whispered. Keanu gave her a kind look. It's not too late to change. Then he turned to leave but stopped at the door. Oh, by the way, he said casually. That motorcycle outside, the old one? Clara glanced up. It's a custom build worth more than any watch in this store, he said with a small smile. I didn't think that mattered until now. And with that he walked out, silent, strong, unforgettable. Inside the store everything was quiet. But by the next morning, a video of what happened had spread everywhere. A customer had recorded the whole thing, the way Clara had laughed at Keanu, the way he had stayed calm and kind. By the afternoon the video had gone viral. The caption said, She laughed at Keanu Reeves for looking too poor to buy a watch. She didn't know who she was talking to. Thousands of comments poured in. This is why you never judge someone by how they look. Class isn't about clothes. It's about how you treat people. Keanu always classy. Inside the store, everyone felt the change. What used to be a proud, fancy showroom now felt like a place of shame. Clara sat in the back office, pale and silent. She hadn't slept. Her phone was full of messages. Some people were angry. Some made fun of her. Some were even worse, saying she should be fired or punished. But the real punishment wasn't online. It was inside the store. Her coworkers wouldn't talk to her. Lisa, the one who had laughed with her, now wouldn't even look at her. The manager ignored her. People came into the store not to shop, but to see where it had happened. That afternoon, the regional manager, Vivian, called a team meeting. She was calm, but her voice was serious. What happened yesterday wasn't just bad for business, she said. It was bad as human beings. Clara felt her throat tighten. We don't train people to know celebrities, Vivian continued. We train them to treat everyone with respect. She walked back and forth in front of the staff. You didn't fail because you didn't recognize a famous person, she said. You failed because you decided a man wasn't worth your kindness. Lisa shifted in her seat. Vivian turned to her. That goes for anyone who stood there and said nothing. Lisa looked down. Clara swallowed. Her voice was small. I didn't mean to hurt him. I just thought he was. Vivian cut her off. A man with a backpack? Long hair? A motorcycle helmet? Silence. That man raised the standard for how we treat people, Vivian said. Without yelling. Without being mean. And he showed more class than any of us did. The room was silent. Vivian turned to Clara. You have hurt the reputation of the most respected store in this city. And now you will face the consequences. Clara's voice cracked. Am I being fired? Vivian paused. You're being held accountable, she said. She handed Clara a folder. Inside was a formal warning, mandatory training, and a temporary suspension without pay. What you do after this will show who you really are, Vivian said. Clara nodded slowly. She picked up her things and left the room. Outside, the world kept talking. News stations picked up the story. Journalists praised Keanu's kindness. Famous people shared the video saying, the world doesn't need louder voices. It needs kinder hearts. But Keanu? He said nothing. He didn't post. He didn't comment. He had already made his statement, through his actions. A few days later, a package arrived at the store. It was for Clara. No name, just a small envelope. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a note written neatly. Everyone has a moment where they choose who they will be from now on. Luxury isn't about price. It's about presence, how you show up for others, especially when no one is watching. KR. Attached was a small gift card for coffee. On a sticky note, just 2 words. Start again. The next week, a customer watched Clara helping an elderly man try on a watch. She smiled. She was patient. She was kind. On her wrist was a small card, tucked like a reminder. Luxury is how we treat each other. Keanu Reeves had walked into a store and been treated like he was less. But he walked out, without yelling, without seeking revenge, without making a scene. Yet he changed everything. He reminded the world that kindness doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. That true luxury isn't gold, diamonds, or fancy brands. It's how you make people feel. Have you ever judged someone too quickly? Or been judged before someone knew your true worth? Maybe it's time we all slow down. Maybe the world needs more quiet strength, like Keanu. If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.